everybody. Welcome to A Call for Love. And my name is Linda Orsini. I'm a transformational life coach. I have a new online course, Emotional Freedom, Getting Unstuck. And I'm here to share with you the message of living in our higher vibration of love. And today, my guest, you are going to love because she really vibrates high in the sphere of loving kindness, not only to herself, but all beings, especially her animals. And her name is Jacqui Morgan, and she's a registered South African counseling psychologist in a private practice. And she offers online psychotherapy to individual, adults, and couples. She actually graduated from the University of Johannesburg with a master's degree in counseling psychology. And she comes to Canada, where I am living, from Johannesburg. So, Jacqui, can you share a little bit about your history? And I would like to dive deep. How did somebody from Johannesburg come to Canada? But first, tell us a little bit about your education and how you transformed yourself to become of service to others through psychology.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda, for having me. Yes, this has been quite a big transformation, but my life before becoming a psychologist was a lot bigger. That because it was full of difficulty, I would say. Didn't have an easy time of growing up. In South Africa, we have such a division in wealth that they're the haves and the have-nots, and we've got a complex political milieu, and growing up there was tough. I think that we had to make the most out of very little, and yet I was part of the privileged end of our society, and so that was complicated. I had an up and down academic career, and by that I meant I moved around a lot. My parents moved around a lot, and therefore so did I, and it had a real impact on me academically, not to my advantage. What was to my advantage was the fact that I was so involved in sports, and I just loved people and just got into all sorts of trouble and made friends no matter where I went. But it was hard growing up. And I think that when I left school, I started working, and then I got into studies, and I found out that I was actually quite the academic, and ended up doing 10 years and reached my master's, and I have absolutely enjoyed my calling as a psychologist. Such a privilege to walk with others, but because I think I know how sore our feet can get from the shoes that we walk in, and so my work is all about just trying to help make people feel like walking's becoming a little bit easier and a little bit more fun along the way.
I love what you say in your biography, that we recognize, and you recognize in particular, that we all carry this metaphorical blisters from the path that we walk in this life. And you feel like it's such a privilege. I really love when you say that and when you give that sentiment, because being of service to others is not always easy. As you know, you've had a lot of traumatic experiences counseling others, but it's so rewarding, because if we're trying to evolve as our own selves, but if we just keep it to ourselves, then we're not of service to humankind.
Yeah, and you know, that said, I did a couple of strength finder tests in my life, and there's so many out there, and my number one strength is empathy, and yet often our strengths also need to be managed, or they can do us harm. So I thought that would be important to say that too.
And I would like to share with the listeners how I met you, because I think it's a beautiful story. You, of course, did all your schooling in South Africa, Johannesburg, and then actually did some schooling in, where else did you do your schooling?
Yeah, all Johannesburg. Well, yeah, I went to school all over South Africa and then did all my university years in Johannesburg.
Which I would love to visit one day, but I understand that, there's a lot of things going on in South Africa now. So you and your husband have moved to Canada, and that's how I met you. And since we have met, it has been such a beautiful union because of all the wealth of knowledge, but also the spirit that you bring. But I talk to my husband Gord often, and we say it's so interesting that from Johannesburg, you have chosen Canada. Why did you choose Canada?
Because in Canada, they speak English. That helps a lot. That goes a long way. My husband is an anesthetist, and so he was headhunted by somebody in Canada. We love snow, and we love the knowledge that we are safe, and we love to belong to a society that is all-inclusive, which we have struggled with in our own country. And I think that there's a lot of work that we need to do as South Africans in repairing the past and truly making amends for our political history. So it's a real privilege for me to be in Canada, and I see so many different people walking around, and they're all so welcome. And there are values that unite everyone, and ultimately it's a human rights protection, that every life is honored and valued and has the right to be protected. And so it's wonderful being here.
Well, I've only lived in Canada my whole life, but I do feel like it's a privilege to live in Canada. And so I am really interested in the concept of recreating ourselves, transitioning. And I was saying to you the other day that my sisters, two of my older sisters, have kind of are transitioning their lives by moving away. And I think it takes a lot of courage to really uproot your whole self from not only your country, but your friends, your family, all the routines, and even the climate that you've always known.
It's true. It requires a person to dig deep. And I never used to like discomfort, and I don't think anyone ever did. I think we're creatures of habit. I think we're creatures of comfort. But I think that that's something we've got to swing around on its head, and we've got to expand our discomfort and lean into it. And I think that that's part of building resilience. And so with everything that I've had to learn here in Canada, including doing the recycling, which you just about need a master's degree in order to do correctly. I've had to just suck it up and figure it out and get frustrated, and then stand and reflect on my frustration, and then think, well, you could make this hard, or you could think of alternatives. And so cognitively, this has been a great move for me. I've had to really learn how to problem solve. And with that has come the beautiful gift of realizing that the problem is often the solution. That what stands in the way becomes the way. And so instead of viewing things as if it's a problem, view it as a possibility. That from this I can learn, that from this I can grow stronger. And so I've had to take my dogs out on runs in the snow and think, well, they're not used to running on a lead. Okay, well, train them. And I've had to just do small little runs with them, get them used to listening to my voice, being patient with them and with myself in the process, so that at the end of the day, we can all win, and we can all say that we've grown and embraced something of the discomfort.
It's true. I always feel that when I'm in a place of discomfort, it's something to notice and then to rise above in order to find the gift in the crisis. Because I really believe my most uncomfortable times in my life was when I had the most transformation. And of course, I always say it's like a butterfly in a chrysalis. It's hard work. You don't just go in as caterpillar and boom, come out as a butterfly. You have to metamorphosize.
You've
You
got to
have to,
struggle.
yeah, struggle. And I
Yeah.
always love that. If there was a story once where somebody tried to pry open the chrysalis so that the caterpillar wouldn't work so hard to get out, but it's the effort to get out that improves the strength of the
Of the
butterfly's wings and
yes.
dries the wings. So you can't rush the process.
No. No, and I think on a deeper psychological level, we shouldn't rush anything, including bad that might come our way, or fate, as one might call it. I think that there's a surrender and an acceptance that we've got to open ourselves up to, because that presses us into being observations of our environment rather than being ones that are feeling like they're the object or the victim. And so I think that we've got to give up the fact that this world is never going to be a struggle, because the truth is, it is, and it should be, and it's good for us.
It reminds me of getting married. People say, "Oh, you're on your honeymoon," and then it's bliss. And I was like, if you get married and then all of a sudden somebody says it's bliss, they're actually doing you a disservice, because it's not that it's not a good thing, but it's a transition, living together, recreating your life, finding patterns, and so it can actually be harmful when you think of life as my students used to say, easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yes, it's a mistruth, and it's when we live under that falsity that we begin to feel like, well, why me, when something hard happens? And that's not a helpful position to be in, that why me? Because it stops your brain from thinking. You start going into an emotional centered mind instead of a rational mind. And I think that all of us have got these two beautiful parts of our minds, and the one is emotional, and the other one is rational, and where they overlap is where our wisdom resides. And I think that that's what I've had to tap into. If you think about buying a house, or moving somewhere, or buying a car, out of your emotional brain, you'll think, okay, well, I need a speedster, I need low profile tires, I want bucket seats, I want, all of these things. It must go as fast as lightning. But if I tell you that now you're going to be buying a car or a house, in your rational mind, you might go, well, can I afford the petrol on that car? Can I afford the spare parts? And so your rational mind can be a killjoy and help you, but your emotional mind is full of passion and love, but can lead you astray. And so I've had to just try to really find that balance and walk that middle path in my everyday today life, and think of wisdom. Yeah.
Well, you do have a lot of wisdom, because we've talked a lot about life and emotions and the thinking mind and the egoic mind, and we've had some really great conversations. What would your advice be to people who are thinking, of either moving or retiring or having a transition in their life, because transitions are big. And I personally believe now, as we are recording this, we're entering into 2024. I feel like there's going to be a lot of shifts. I feel like there's been a lot of heaviness in the past several years. And I feel like with the shifts, there will come transformation. So, what advice would you have to people who are a little fearful of transitions and unsure? And last week I recorded an episode, Trust and Surrender. So I am practicing trust and surrender. But what do you feel has helped you on your journey moving from South Africa, in particularly Johannesburg, to Canada in the Owen Sound, Georgian Bay area?
I think I would say, like I say to all my clients in therapy, and my journey with my clients in therapy is what I'm doing with myself. And that is to be self-compassionate. So to notice when the inner child or the infant self is crying, and to just, and to be a nurturing, sensitive, tuned in mother to that part of yourself, and to just say, okay, you're crying because you're hungry, or you're crying because it's time to take a break. Whatever it is that you're going through, to really hold the little you's hand and say, it's pretty tough right now. I tell you what, let's do this. Let's take a break, and then we'll carry on. And let's think back. We did that and that well, so it's not a complete disaster. Because I think what ends up happening when you make a major life transformation is that you expect so much of yourself. And there's so much to learn, and everything takes time. And so all your coping resources are just overwhelmed, and you've got to develop new ones. But I think before you can develop new ones, you've got to be kind to yourself. Otherwise, the critical voice will just come through and say, you know, you really messed that up. Like, for instance, I failed my first learner's test, learner's driver's test when I got to Canada. Oh my goodness. And it really knocked my confidence, you know. But I had to get back up there. But first I needed to sit with the crying infant and say, that didn't feel good to fail. But that doesn't mean that I'm a failure. And so I needed to really tap into my rational mind as well and think, what am I blowing out of proportion here? Because that is something that we do when we're under a tremendous amount of stress, is to chuck the baby out with the bathwater instead of just sitting, loving ourselves in order to help ourselves to reach our thinking brain and start to problem solve into the situation, and then to celebrate it. Every small victory, celebrate every small victory. Doing recycling is a small victory for me.
That is so funny. Do they not recycle in South Africa?
They do, but not as well. And I remember our trash, as Canadians call it. In South Africa, we say our garbage or our rubbish. Our trash never got picked up by the truck because we did it all wrong. And I had to do the walk of shame back to our apartment with all my bags and all my things because we just had it all messed up. And I had to really apply myself in order to get that right. So yeah, everything is different. I mean, the page sizes, you know, in South Africa are A4, which is a certain dimension. The paper here is bigger, which means that none of the files that are brought with me fit the paper in it. So the punch is different. So you're going to punch your paper in 3 holes because the files, it is, everything is different. And different doesn't mean bad. Different just means different. And I think as a society of humankind, we grow up being familiar, being comfortable with the familiar. And then different feels not good just because it's different. But different is beautiful. Different is a new perspective. Different helps you cognitively to think through a problem in a different way. And so our brains need that, because when you stay comfortable forever in a day, your car can drive itself to the shop that you know, and you can do your shopping in the aisle that you know exactly where to find the goodies that you need. I took a week to do one grocery shop when I first got here because I was so bombarded and overwhelmed by choice. And I had to really try to selectively pay attention to what it is that I came in there to do. That took a lot of cognitive. So I needed to be kind to myself, and I needed to sleep better. I needed to sleep more. So I needed to up my self-care routine, which I was then critical about and said, oh, so you did the laundry today, whoopie-doo. Come on now, you know?
I
So
think it's really
self-compassion.
interesting. I think that's interesting that you say that, because when we're going through a transition, something traumatic, we are so uncomfortable with it that we rush it. And it's stress on the body.
Mhm.
And it really requires us to be more mindful and to go slower.
Yes, very
It
much so.
it reminds me, when I'm overly stressed about things, the first thing I do is take something off my list, because I need to create more space to
Yes.
go a little slower. And my one sister taught me that, do a little less. And people don't like that advice, because they say, when you're stressed and you have a lot to do, you should do more. But no, I really, well, and it's very comical about the differences, because when you're always doing the same thing, you don't notice it. For instance, when you're saying about the paper and the hole punch, it is so common to me that I do it really mindlessly, but it's a
Yeah,
great reminder that things are so different.
things are so different. Yeah. And to your point, Linda, I think that as a society, we get so obsessed with our duties and our roles and our responsibilities that we forget how to be silent and still. Um, and I don't know that we can care for others if we don't know how to just stop and care for ourselves and offload ourselves. I think with social media, I think we get insulted by too much information every day. To slow down helps us to become more mindful and helps us to celebrate our senses, which is so important for mental health care.
Absolutely. And I do feel that you recognizing it and actually sharing it in those words allows people to hear it and then give themselves permission.
Yes.
Because sometimes we think that if we go slow, or we give ourselves more, as you said, self-compassion, soothing touch, that we're being self-indulgent or selfish instead of serving, especially if you're in a nurturing role. And so it's really important, I feel, to hear it from others in order
Yeah.
to give it to ourselves.
Well said. And also I was listening to something by Gabor Mate, and he draws out the link between working constantly at a pace that is not helpful for our nervous systems and chronic illness. And we are a society that is so burdened by chronic illness. And so it requires behavioral change. And so we have to do something differently. So yes, I would say taking the load off to increase the bandwidth to care for oneself is not an indulgent thing. It is as much as taking a bath every day. It is caring for yourself, because then you can be your best self and you can think more clearly.
That's beautiful. And I completely agree. I'm a big advocate for self-compassion, especially in this world where we're really hard on ourselves and everyone's demanding a lot. And especially now that COVID has, all the restrictions are long gone, everything is full force. We are in a huge swing right now. The traffic has tripled, in my opinion. I just feel like everything is more of an insult to the senses. Of course, it's really great because we're connecting, but wow, it's just full force now.
Yeah. I was thinking about COVID, and I was thinking about how there was also such a blessing in that period of our lives, because everything seemed to slow down. And it reminded me of the seasons of life, and how I'm sitting here in the snow right now. I'm watching it snowing right outside my window. And my fellow South Africans are all just telling me how hot it is, and it's just amazing. But for those that are making major life transformations, to also remember that seasons change because they need to. And winter, just because winter is hard, doesn't make it not beautiful, and doesn't mean that it is death. In fact, it's part of the life cycle. And if fruit doesn't drop from a tree and go underground and go somewhere dark for a while, it can't pop up in the spring. And so when we take that time out to nurture ourselves, that's part of what we're doing. We're saying, come out, come in from the cold, so we can have a break, have a respite, so that there can be new life to something else. And I missed that from lockdown. It was like I needed something external to give me permission to slow down. And I didn't have to attend everybody's functions, because saying no to me was so hard always. And now no one was going anywhere. And so I could just be at home. And I became the fittest version of myself. I lost the most weight. I grew the most vegetables. I spent more time with my husband. There were some beautiful moments that I had during that was taken away from me when the world reopened again. And I think maybe, as much as it was a curse to have something like COVID, it was hard. It is also like a blessing, because it taught us something. And maybe we need to not just write that off and forget that. Maybe we need to incorporate some of those practices in our life now.
I wonder how many people have gotten back onto that hamster wheel and, let those awarenesses just slide away, because I feel that I really noticed it and I made it a mandate in my mind to make those shifts. I don't say yes to everything, although I do. I was just mentioning at the yoga studio with the friends that I do still suffer from FOMO, fear of missing out. But I think that's my personality. I, as a school teacher, we always had the summer off. And I remember one of my colleagues retired, and she said to me, Linda, the summer isn't as sweet once you retire, because when you're given the gift of a complete reprieve, it's very special. And so it's just like what I think of you're saying, the transition of the seasons. If we really notice the seasons and move with the seasons, and without saying, oh, it's snowy, it's gray, where are the flowers, but hibernate and go inward and, metamorphosize, then when the next season comes, we can really blossom. And there's so much appreciation when you see those first blossoms on the tree. Oh my goodness.
Yes, exactly that. And suffering doesn't last forever, and suffering produces something good. So that's part of the seasons of our life. Yeah.
Well, I really loved this conversation. And I'm going to say personally, I'm really grateful that you decided to move near us because I have loved your company and, of course, your husband.
Likewise.
And your puppies. But if you had just a summary for people to honor the seasons of their life, to honor transitions so that they can go away with this clear mindset, what's 3 takeaways that you would like to offer them to remember?
I think it would be expand your discomfort. Hold the little you's hand and look for something new every day. However small, however big, just look for something new because the environment is full of beautiful little things that can symbolize a lot for you. So hang on to that as meaning for your transition.
Which makes me think of gratitude.
Yes, I would say that there's a grace and a gratitude there. That looking for something and appreciating it makes a person feel grateful that they, first of all, are able to look for it and to find it and to hang on to it in some way that they can make meaning from.
Yeah, gratitude. Is there a particular thing that you're grateful for about your move?
There are many things. What I'm the most grateful for is that I've become more observant internally and externally, which helps me as a therapist to do my work a whole lot better. So as an example, I've become more aware of what I'm feeling, whether it's something good or bad. In fact, I don't like to even name it good or bad. For me, they're one and of the same. But I'm so much more self-aware because I need to be to look after myself in what has been a difficult transition. And then I would say that I am more in touch with my external environment. So when I run in the cold, I think about how fresh the air is on my skin. And I think about how each snowflake with its 6 sides and its hollow middle contains the sound, which is why my running shoes sound different on the snow than it does on the sand, and those little things. And when I stop and I see something, I get out my cell phone and I take a picture of it. And I'm seeing micro beauties in what nature holds for us. So nature itself is very healing. I would say get out as much as you can.
Absolutely. I feel that, yesterday I went out, I took my dog Guinness, and the color came back in my cheeks. I felt invigorated. I felt fresh. And of course, just the other day, we went for a beautiful walk together. I don't know. It's food for the soul.
It really is. And Linda, that same road that we walked up, Rob and I drove down the other day together, and I thought, I've been here before. And so what seems like a very strange and unfamiliar environment ends up being little trails, like they're left in the snow. It's little trails of memories that you gradually lay down. And before you know it, a plain old dirt road becomes a beautiful place because you were there with somebody special who took time out of their schedule to just walk and talk and reflect and do a little bit of exercise. And so things become a lot more comforting in the end through people and connection and the love that we share with one another.
All right. Well, to the listeners of A Call for Love, I would say get out and go for a walk with somebody you care about, right? Is that not a great way to uplift your spirits and connect? Because connection is such a beautiful thing. So I am grateful for our connection. And I thank you, Jacqui, for being here and talking to us on A Call for Love.
Thanks, Linda.
So wishing everybody great peace from both of us, and namaste. Thank you for listening. It would mean so much to me if you could share this episode with someone you feel could benefit from its message. And subscribe to A Call for Love podcast to receive new weekly episodes every Tuesday. Head over to globalwellnesseducation.com to learn more.